JSS has been a very strong platform. It has given me a lot of opportunities.
We train the students not just only in the clinicals, but also on how to work in the laboratories.
Our teachers and faculty, everybody has been so supportive. I've never felt like a foreigner in this place.
Around 500 patients per day visit the JSS Dental College.
The research microscope has additional attachments like the phase contrast microscopy, dark field microscopy, fluorescent microscopy, and image analysis with camera attachments.
We are able to treat the patient at the lowest cost.
Have focused particularly a care for special children, of which JSS Smile is one of the focus areas.
We have a good number of collections in our library.
The environment of the hostel is really good and we feel secure here. Providing each and every day healthy and hygienic food for us.
Our university has provided us with many sports facilities and gymnastic facilities to maintain our fitness.
To be the best, choose the best. Choose JSS Dental College and Hospital and feel the difference.
JSS Dental College is one of the premier institutions looked for graduation and post-graduation by many students.
JSS Dental College and Hospital is a extremely wonderful facility for the students and also for the patients to get the best of the care.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम्.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, initially we thought we'll confine ourselves to prosthetics. But then when I was looking at all the topics and all, I realized that we are always talking about the alleviating the pain of the patients. But first, what about ourselves? We need to first take care of ourselves and be healthy. That's when we can do better in the profession. I still remember during our UG days, even in the university exam Viva, always the first question used to start with your position or how you hold the instruments and things like that. And there used to be always a staff member only to see how you are sitting, what is the height of your stool and your vision, direct vision or indirect vision, like that. That much of stress was laid during those days on. Yes, before the term ergonomics was not known, but still stress was laid on that. So taking all this into clue, I thought it's time we discuss this, and that's why, and even Patil sir has said, yes, it's a good thing that you're doing. That's why we have chosen this topic. Yes, we know this is for general dentists, but it should be there for us. And coming, the next topic would be mostly implant therapeutics. And we are trying to get a speaker from Italy. So we will be informing all of you the details of it, either implant therapeutics or bonded restorations by Mahida. That will be the next schedule. Now, may I ask Dr. Sunil to please introduce the panelists for a few minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Anil sir. Good morning. Good morning, Nadir sir. Good morning, one and all.
Good morning, Sunil.
After having an amazing success of the first session of the webinar series, and we are here today with the second session and the topic which we all are awaited to hear from Dr. Meenakshi. Thank you very much, sir, for having chosen this topic. And I'm very glad to introduce the two panelists for today's session, and they need no introduction. And really, it was an honor for me to introduce our own president, Dr. J.R. Patel, sir. And thank you very much, sir, once again for being here again today. As sir has already given the opening remarks for the webinar series, and as well as he has been showing all the interest and support for the webinar series of the IPS Karnataka branch. And I'm sure all of you know about Dr. J.R. Patel, sir, but I really would like to say a few words about him. Sir himself, as Anil sir said, is a guru, yoga teacher, and a super yoga person who does it regularly. And to start with him, sir is a very senior academician with 38 years of experience. He has worked as a professor and head, as a principal, as a vice chancellor, and presently working at Narsimbai Dental College in Gujarat. Sir has about 65 publications to his credit in various national, international journals, and authored many chapters in many textbooks. Apart from this, he is very actively involved in all the functions of the IPS all over, and as well as founder of community outreach programs and doing great service in Gujarat. And with this short introduction, I would like to thank and welcome Dr. J.R. Patel, sir, for joining us today. The second panelist we have here is Dr. Ramesh Nadir, sir. And myself and Dr. Anil sir were having a chat that who is going to introduce the Dr. Ramesh Nadgir sir, because both of us wanted to do it. So thank you very much, sir. And sir needs no introduction, as so many of his students all over Karnataka are heading the departments and postgraduates all over India. Sir is a true academician and has been largely instrumental in forming the Karnataka branch earlier, and now IPS Karnataka branch very actively involved with all the programs of the Karnataka branch. And with his CV, I really went through Sir's CV in depth so much, and he's a very true academician and has H index with a rating of 5, which is a very high quality publications. Sir, we really need to know much more about you, really, which I came to know today. And sir has completed and still ongoing doing so many research projects. He has worked in the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences as a BOS member, and worked with various capacities in STM, one of the most reputed dental colleges of India. With a small introduction, I welcome Dr. Ramesh Nadgir sir. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us here today and as one of the panelists. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Sunil. Thank you. Hi, Anil.
Hi, sir.
Can you hear
Welcome,
me?
sir. Welcome, loud and clear.
Can you see me?
In full glamour.
No, full screen.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
2 words from you.
Yeah, nothing else. My sincere request is, now at this pandemic, I pray God to keep more healthy, and all of you have to stay fit. You have to increase. You must have seen all the advertisements in the TV and everywhere to boost the immunity now to face this pandemic, crazy COVID. So this ergonomics, it's of course it's a very old concept, but the new name is ergonomics. So now mainly this ergonomics deals. I am not going to tell you or explain you everything about the ergonomics because anyway Dr. Meenakshi is already there. She is going to highlight everything about the ergonomics, and particularly this is very, very important as far as the dentistry is concerned. Of course, as you all know, the dentistry is a very noble profession, but at the same time, we have some occupational hazards. Like most importantly, because most of the time, rather than spending the time with the family, we spend most of our time in dental clinics, giving good health to the patient. So at this time, we usually see that the patients are more comfortable, but we don't see our own health. We do a lot of interiors, spend a lot of money in the interiors, and then the patient health, put sofa, all those TV, all those comfortable things in the reception area. But at the same time, we being the dentist, we are going to operate at least, or we are going to work on a patient at least about 8 to 10 hours a day. So we have to see our own health. So here ergonomics tells you mostly about your chair side position, your position while treating the patient. So you have to be more fit, but otherwise actually probably after the age of 45 or 50 years, we end up in having a back problem, low back pain, cervical spondylitis, neck pain, and all those things. So to avoid all these things, always I sincerely request all the budding dentists, especially the youngsters, and of course the seniors also, to cultivate good habits or the chair side position, so that our health also will be good and we can work efficiently for a more than required time. Our efficiency will be increased. So this is all about the ergonomics, and I thank the President J.R. Patel Sirji, IPS President, and KPS President Secretary, especially Dr. Sunil, and most important person in this webinar and the backbone of this webinar, Dr. Anil. I thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak few words. Thank you very much. Stay fit, stay healthy.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your short and crisp message. I know you are busy today, but you have taken your time out. I know that. Thanks a lot. Thanks again. Thanks again. And before we start, just a small announcement. I forgot to tell you all. Our university has started a course, a postgraduate course and a diploma course on dental ergonomics. So the details will come on the website very shortly. Now, may I ask Dr. Soumya? Yes.
Anil, yeah. 1 second. We welcome our President, IPS Karnataka State Branch, Dr. Sanat Kumar Shetty. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining in. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Sanat.
Good morning, Sanat.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, sirs. Good morning, Sunil.
You want to say a few words?
No, carry on.
Okay. So, may I ask Dr. Soumya to introduce the speaker of the day? Soumya, over to you.
Good morning to everybody. Myself, as I said, Dr. Soumya. I'm an assistant professor in JSS Dental College, Mysore.
And a PhD.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Meenakshi, who is my colleague, my friend, and my batchmate. Dr. Meenakshi has completed PhD under the guidance of Dr. Anil Kumar Pujari. She has received a DBT grant for her PhD topic. And she has also received ICMR grant for ergonomics in dental profession. And she has many national and international publications to her credit. And she's involved in many research projects. With a small introduction, I welcome Dr. Meenakshi and happy learning to all.
Meenakshi.
Yes, sir.
Take over, Amma. All the best.
Thank you, sir. So healthcare sector is one of the leading sectors, not only in terms of revenue generation or employment opportunities. We are also intended to provide quality treatment to our dental or to our patients. And even in this era of COVID-19 pandemic, we do have our COVID warriors striving hard to provide quality treatment to our patients. And since we as dentists are involved in providing the treatment towards a small opening of stomatognathing system, we tend to assume flawed postures to provide quality care, forgetting, as Ramesh sir did mention, that we do not take care of our own health. With this small little background, I would like to introduce my topic, that is posture-directed dentistry. I think most of us are aware of it, but requires lack of implementation in the daily practice. So it's mainly posture-directed dentistry, dental ergonomics, and its concepts applied to dental practice. I would definitely like to thank all the participants who have actively given their comments to my Google Forms, which has been provided to you all. And when I got to know that since 12 months, most of our practitioners or our participants had pain in relation to the neck, the shoulders, the upper back, and lower back. This is the result which we got from 129 responses. And during the last 12 months, if the question was also asked that did it prevent to carry out your normal activities? And of course, yes, we got a positive response that few of them in relation to the neck pain, shoulder pain, of course, lower back pain had also prevented them to carry out their normal physical activities and had some amount of discomfort, comfort in these areas. And when questioned regarding any consultation which the people have opted for, around 15% have opted for general physician, opinion from general physicians, 20% in relation to physiotherapists, and few of them have also resolved their pain by going to a chiropractitioners also. They're all healthcare professionals who commonly deal with realignment of your spinal vertebra. And regarding the grading of pain, when it was compared using a VAS scale, visual analog scale, the pain ranged from 4 to 8. So they are actually suffering from pain, but not getting the right kind of treatment. So history dates back to 16th century, where commonly standing dentistry was practiced. It was only in 1960s that the sitting dentistry came into existence. That helped the dentist to give the quality treatment by taking care of himself. Now the question arises, are we really taking care of ourselves? Now what do we actually see here? The clinicians normally tend to assume non-neutral posture, not definitely taking care of themselves, and trying to get closer to the area of work. That is our common instinct of any practitioner, to get closer and twisting your trunk as well as hunching your back as well as getting your neck closer to the area of operator. Apart from this, we also tend to assume a prolonged static posture. Our posture is always not dynamic. We tend to assume static postures for a longer duration. And we are also intended to have lot amount of repetitive motions, large amount of forces exerted by our equipments. Visual changes because we tend to assume so close position to the area of interest, and together we are also involved in a lot amount of mental stress. So when we get to know about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I got this information that most of our fellow dentists, healthcare professionals are commonly involved or commonly more stressed and are suffering from large amount of disorders, which is often termed as musculoskeletal disorders, which could be considered as one of the occupational hazard. So this is all evidence-based. And this was a study which was done in 2014 to know what would be the individual factors which could actually promote us or which would drive us to a musculoskeletal disorder. So performing the tasks over and over again, which are without taking any rest breaks, treating an excessive number of patients in one day, increasing the number of patients, not enough rest breaks during the working day, working in an awkward or flawed posture for a longer duration, working in the same position for a longer period of time, static and slouched posture, twisting and bending of our trunk in an awkward way. That also could be an individual risk factor, and reaching our body not within an arm's length. Continuing the work, this is very important. That's why I've highlighted here. Continue to work even while injury lasts. That could be our individual factors which could drive us towards musculoskeletal disorders. These are all evidence-based. So with this background, if we try to classify our occupational injury, I would like to drive your attention here. 46% of our practitioners are often suffering with injury made worse by work. So what is that injury which is made worse? And we are not accustoming ourselves or fitting ourselves to the quality of work. So that is nothing but our work-related musculoskeletal disorders. So as per WHO or World Health Organization, musculoskeletal disorders is defined as the disorders of the muscles, tendons, the peripheral nerves or vascular system, not directly resulting from an acute trauma or an instantaneous event. So these could be the contributing factors. Apart from our individual risk factors, there are certain contributing factors which could contribute to ourselves to work-related musculoskeletal disorders. As mentioned earlier, repeated frequent motions with large amount of force, slouch sitting, forward bending. At the same time, we do have a research paper from Ramesh Nadigar sir on carpal tunnel syndrome. If you could observe here, because of large amount of flexion of our wrist, the medial nerve here in the tunnel gets compressed, and often the operators often suffer from tingling sensation in the fingers. So that is often termed as carpal tunnel syndrome, often resulting from grasping of smaller instruments, not grasping in the right way for a longer period of time. So as said earlier, the repetitive motions which commonly we dentists are involved in are scaling, polishing, and tooth preparations, as well as slouch sitting. Let me take you to some of the evidence-based or facts and figures relating to which are the areas where the common practitioners commonly suffer from. So in one of the articles in 2000, the practitioners often suffer from neck, the upper back pain and lower back pain, which is almost uniform in both males and females. In relation to wrists and hands, the females are more targeted to suffer from wrist pain. When comparing the amount of pain which is exerted among dental hygienists and dental assistants, even you can actually see from Burkett et al. There's some amount of pain resulting, as well as diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome, hand and wrist pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, and lower back pain. If you could observe, the lower back pain is almost commonly seen as one of the pain prevalent among dental professionals. So this was a study which we have done among general dental practitioners of Mysuru district as in 2018, just to have, and this was a questionnaire survey which we conducted, just to know if the practitioners are involved in any kind of medical assistance, to know if they have any pain and if they've resolved their pain having medical assistance. Around 78.3% have taken medical assistance to resolve their pain. And 73% of general practitioners are not commonly involved in rest breaks, mini breaks in between the patients, and they're not commonly involved in any kind of physical activities. Around 69.2% are not actively involved in any kind of physical activities. And when questioned regarding their idea about ergonomics, 31.7% are not at all aware of ergonomics. And when questioned regarding the prevalence of pain in different regions, Around 40.8% of the practitioners had pain in the neck and shoulders, 14.2 in the lower back pain, elbow and wrist pain, and of course stiffness in the fingers was also commonly noticed among our general dental practitioners. Hence, a study was further conducted to know if the hours of practice would relate to the work-related musculoskeletal disorders, and we did have a positive correlation where as the hours of practice increases, the amount of patients suffering from work-related musculoskeletal disorders, though it often go unnoticed, are often more. And we have conducted a knowledge, attitude, and practices of work-related musculoskeletal disorders among our own dental students who are coming for preclinical lab, among second-year dental students who are actually exposed to the mannequin training as early as second years. And all of us know that we are always intended to mannequin training in our second year. So we wanted to know if they have any information regarding the work-related musculoskeletal disorders, and we have analyzed their videographs using Kinovia software, and these are the few postures which they have assumed in their work or during the classes. And this was the stabilization of the tripod in order to capture the videographs, and then later still videographs were taken, or still photographs from the video were extracted. And the kind of questionnaire given to these students were the standardized Nordic questionnaire, not to know the amount of pain which were lasting from the last 12 months or the later stages. And the questionnaire was also assessed using the RULA, Rapid Upper Limb Assessment, which consists of two groups regarding any trauma resulting in the upper arm as well as the lower arm. So the RULA is mainly divided into two options, that is Group A and Group B. And it was scored individually in order to assess the pain and prevalence in the upper arm, lower arm, wrist, and waist in relation to Group A. And in relation to Group B, the pain was assessed in the neck, trunk, and shoulders. And to our surprise, when we analyzed their questionnaire, most of them had pain in the last 12 months in relation to their neck, their upper back, and the lower back. They had a little bit of pain, and which went unnoticed. In relation to Group B, that is neck, shoulders, and lower back, the right shoulders had more pain because most of our students were right-handed, and 62% had lower back pain. And in the last 12 months, around 64% did opt for general physicians to elevate their pain. So this is how we have analyzed their body postures in relation to the Kinovia software. So we have got this table anatomical landmarks, and regarding different treatment areas, we have joined these areas, that is the anatomical landmarks were clubbed, in order to know the amount of flexion which is often occurring in these areas. And this is how we have targeted. Anything which is almost straight is most acceptable. Changing the direction or somewhere here, it is compromised, that is, it requires immediate attention, and severe damage would have occurred if there is severe bending, twisting, and slouching. So this is how our students ended up with. So Group A and Group B was analyzed again for the action levels. Action levels is nothing but to know which area is traumatic and requires immediate attention. And when this was analyzed in relation to the action levels in region to neck, shoulder, upper back, and lower back, where all the scores summed up, we got to know that most of our students were in relation to level 3, having severe neck and shoulder pain which required immediate attention in relation to Group A, and Group B, that is level 4. So level 3 and level 4, they required immediate attention. If not intervened here, then it would end up with severe damage. So there was a study done in 2019 to know some of the work-related musculoskeletal disorders among different specialists. And here, if you could notice, we prosthodontists are also in line to end up with work-related musculoskeletal disorders next to our periodontists. So these are the different faulty postures assumed by our clinicians. So with this little background, I would like to take you through a journey of anatomy of our spine, sitting straight and working right, the four-handed and concepts of four-handed and six-handed dentistry, and how do we prevent with chair-side operatory exercises to optimize our musculoskeletal health in this era of COVID-19 pandemic. So when you could see this, the anatomy of our spine, it is mainly the spine which mainly helps us to maintain our posture. Our posture is nothing but a biomechanical alignment of our body to perform our task. So this biomechanical alignment of our spine is very much important, which is mainly formed by different vertebrae. So if you could see the spine, it is often spaced, and these are all our intervertebral discs between our cervical vertebrae to keep our the vertebra or the intervertebral foramen patent, so that it mainly provides continuous nerve supply and blood supply. So this is how our spine looks in order to maintain our stable posture. Our posture is very much important to support our head over this curved spine. So what are the primary curves or secondary curves which our spine actually assume? Our spine assumes these type of curves, the primary curves and secondary curves. This is called as cervical lordosis, thoracic kyphosis, and lumbar lordosis, mainly formed by our cervical, thoracic, and lumbar vertebrae in order to maintain the stability of our body and help in uniform distribution of our load throughout our body. So this is also compensated, or it is actually driven through our postural muscles. It's very important for us to know what are the different postural muscles, and very important postural muscles are these trapezius, especially here. This is the trapezius muscles, the levator scapulae muscles, the rhomboid, the muscles which is mainly involved, which are also called as movable muscles, the rhomboid minor, the rhomboid major, and the latissimus dorsi, that is our lower back and the upper back muscles. Very important to maintain the stable posture along with the definite spinal curves. If you see here, our upper trapezius, the division of the trapezius, upper trapezius, which is very tender. If you could see, if you could just rotate and if you could just grab it here, this is your upper trapezius. The middle trapezius and lower trapezius, very tender. Upper trapezius, very tender and very sensitive to stress. And this is our rhomboids, which is mainly help in stabilizing our shoulders or shoulder girdles. And this is our scapulae or the scapular muscles supporting our shoulder blades. So which shape should the spine be for our optimal weight distribution? Should this be the spinal curvature? Should this be the spinal positioning, or this is the spinal curvature which has to be maintained for optimal weight distribution? Let us see here. So when a study was already done in 2016 to know the different type of spinal curvatures commonly seen in among dentists. Now there are different curvatures of spine which could be an anatomical defect or self-induced because of our occupation. If this is our ideal alignment of posture, this is our kyphotic and lordotic posture, where the pelvis gets tilted out. This is a flat back posture, pelvis tilted back, and this is swayed back posture or the rounded shoulder posture. Here again, the pelvis is tilted back. And when we have analyzed during our different studies, we got to know around 85.4% had we are dentists with forward head posture. If you could see here, there is forward head posture in kyphotic lordotic posture, which could be anatomically defective or self-induced, as well as you have a forward head posture in relation to a swayed back posture or rounded shoulder posture. Even the rounded shoulder posture, the dentists, the prevalence is around 68.8%. Scoliosis is one such terminology where the spine is shifted to one side. So 18.8% of our dentists are also have anatomical defect in the form of scoliosis and hyperlordosis. So this is your hyperlordosis. Okay, 17.3% usually have a hyperlordotic spine where the pelvis gets tilted outwards. So what happens if the patient or the operator or the clinician assumes a forward neck posture of more than required? So what happens is our trapezius are our postural muscles, which is mainly helping us to maintain our posture in balance, and at the same time stabilizing our spinal curves. So as soon as you tilt or you get your head forward, the upper trapezius and levator scapulae muscles becomes tight. It is mainly flexed. So in this way, to compensate this, what happens is the pectoral muscles also becomes tight because these are all tender muscles and cannot sustain large amount of stress. So it requires some amount of compensation. So what happens is, as and when the upper trapezius and levator scapulae become stretched, to compensate this forward head posture, the upper pectoral muscles also becomes tight. Okay, the upper major pectoral muscles also becomes tight to compensate for the load, in turn making our deep cervical neck flexures. So these are the muscles which are mainly help for moving our head. So what happens is this becomes flexed and weak. So to compensate that, our lower trapezius also becomes weak. So this ultimately ends with what is called as upper crossed syndrome. So let us know how heavy is our head, because our head, the spine is mainly helping us to balance our body. It is also balancing our head in relation to our spine. So our head is around 12 pounds. When I say 12 pounds, it is 4.5 kgs. So if you're positioning your head this way, so my head is stabilized over my spine, or on different curvature of our spine, and it is helping in equal distribution of our load. So every forward inch or every forward bending of our neck by 1 inch will increase the load on the spine by 10 pounds. Okay, if this is 2-inch forward head positioning, this is 3-inch forward head positioning. So the load which the spine has to bear because of every forward bending of our head will come up to approximately 42 pounds, which our spine is not designed to do so. When I say 42 pounds, it is around 19.5 kgs. So that is the amount of load which we are loading our spine in relation to forward neck bending. So this ultimately leads to large amount of pain in different areas. We dentists are commonly involved in neck, shoulders, and lower back pain. So what happens because of this slouch sitting or forward bending of our neck ultimately results in cervical spondylosis, trapezius myalgia. Most commonly, we dentists are commonly suffering from trapezius myalgia. Cervical spondylosis often goes unnoticed, and people are commonly resume to large amount of medicaments. Lower back pain, especially patients or the operators with tall torso, carpal tunnel syndrome, and wrist drop. So there was a study by Hanke et al. In 2007 that as soon as there is forward neck positioning, there is rounded shoulders, there is lordosis, and there is pelvic tilt forward. This automatically provides or induces lot amount of stress in the temporomandibular joint and in our muscles of mastication. So what happens in the muscles of mastication is our elevator muscles of the mandible, especially the temporalis and masseter, is often stressed. So what happens when that happens? Our mandible is pushed upwards and retruded. So it mainly results in overclosure of the mandible, thus compromising our freeway space. This was a study done in 2007, but there are no scientific evidences to document the statement. But we should take utmost attention when we are diagnosing patients with temporomandibular disorders to know or to have a differential diagnosis that it could be related to faulty postures as well. So what is this ergonomy? So can I say this ergonomy is just making children tall enough not to make your dads bend. So the solution is basically ergonomics. So ergonomics, ergo means work, and nomos is nothing but natural laws. It is the art and science that fits the job to the worker and not vice versa, not the operator to the job. So as per International Ergonomic Organization, it is mainly the art and science that fits the job to the operator's physical, psychological, and emotional well-being in such a way that it enhances the efficiency as well as the well-being of the operators. It is mainly to strike a balance between human capabilities and work statistics. So we can say it is mainly a triad positioning of the operator between the clinician, the workplace, and designing our job to cater to the needs of the operator. So let's get further into how do you work right by sitting straight. So this would be the first ergonomic mistake that would end our dental career. So as I said earlier, the slouch posture, which most of us tend to assume, and it is instinct that we tend to assume this faulty posture to get ourselves closer to the area of work. So there are 5 components of postures that includes the base of support. As soon as the base of support, it's normally the spinal curvature or the head, which mainly should fall perpendicular to the base of support. So as soon as the base of support is shifted forward, why this occurs is mainly because of faulty positioning of the operator in relation to the operator's chair and the faulty positioning of the lower back and the neck and the lower legs. Okay, this is the faulty positioning which we tend to assume because of our constraints in the operator design as well as constraints in the dental chair itself, dental chair selection itself. So we tend to assume these positionings, which automatically drives our neck forward and shoulders being elevated. So our base of support is very important. Our shoulders tend to get elevated as soon as your neck comes forward. To compensate for the trapezius strain, your shoulder muscles, the rhomboid muscles take the stress. So our shoulders automatically gets elevated and you tend to assume a slouch posture. The angle between your shoulders and the upper back tend to increase. So what happens with the trunk? So these are the different components of posture. Our trunk also gets twisted because our back is not properly supported to our lumbar curvature of your operating chair. Your lumbar spine and the pelvis also tilts because of you assuming a twisted trunk position. The neck becomes forward. As soon as you get your neck forward, the pelvic tilts backward, or you assume what is called as slouched posture or slouched posture where your lumbar support is not adequately supported by your operating chair, and twisted trunk or the lumbar spine. So these are the 6 components of posture which we are supposed to take, which we have to give important attention when we are selecting what is called as operator's chair. So our operator's chairs should be designed to cater the needs of the operator, because everybody has individual characteristics to cater to the needs. Each person is different. So one chair fits all will not serve the purpose. So what are the different guidelines you're supposed to select when you're selecting an operating chair? The first and very important feature or the point which you're supposed to remember is the lumbar curvature. The lumbar curvature should be adequate. The basal tilt of your chair, the discal health, your spinal discs health. At the same time, the height of the operator and the gender, all this plays a vital role when you're selecting the operator's chair. Now, we had a questionnaire given to you in your Google form where the question is stated as, which of the following features does your operator's chairs have? That is the working chair have. And most of them have given that height adjustment is the common feature often observed in your operating chair. Together with 66.7% have given positive response that they do have the seat angle adjustment. When I say seat angle adjustment, it is tilting of your seating pan. Few of them have also told that they have good lumbar support adjustment, and very few had armrest angle adjustments. So when questioned regarding what are the features which you commonly adjust, most of them have answered that it is the height adjustment which commonly we tend to adjust in our operating chair. Very few give importance on the seat angle adjustment, the lumbar adjustment, the armrest and the armrest angle adjustment. Let's see how it is. So the golden rule here is adjust your chair first. So when questioned regarding have you received any training in correct operating position, 56.3% have said that they have not received any correct operating chair position. Let me give you a small exercise here. If you're sitting on your chair and listening to this lecture, I want you to do a small exercise. Take your hand and try to support your lower back regarding the curvature of your spine, and try to go as far back so that your back is well supported to the chair. When you're doing that, I want you to also observe that your thighs and your feet should be parallel on the ground. Okay. So if you're sitting on the right chair, so what actually happens is, even if you go far back, your lumbar support is adequate and your thighs and your feet will be almost parallel to the floor. If not, your feet gets raised. And what happens if you, not to assume or to get into the curvature of your lumbar spine, you tend to come forward, or you tend to sit or in the forward of your chair. You tend to perch at the edge of your chair. So this is what I want you to visualize. So whenever you sit, I want you to have the good lumbar support. This is where the base is completely seated in relation to your chair, and there should be at least 3-finger distance between the edge of your chair and the back of your knee. That's when it is ideally considered that your chair is optimal for working. Okay. So there are plethora of dental chairs available in the market. Now the important question here is, are all chairs ergonomic? So the different chairs, as I've mentioned here, they're all contoured chairs. Here you're supposed to know that is the chair adequate and help me in ergonomically positioning to obtain my posture, a safe neutral posture. If you observe this chair, it is not ideal and it is oftenly not termed as ergonomic. Okay, and this is oftenly called as stitched posture and stitched type of operating chair. Now here I would like to mention 2 important terminologies. Few of them use it as dental operating stool, and few commonly use the term dental chair. Both are equally correct. When you have a good back support and your arm support, it is often termed as a dental chair. If you don't have any back support and your arm support, it is often termed as dental stool. Now, how are we going to select the dental chair, which is very ideal for me? So there are different criteria which you're supposed to look into. Let me go back to that slide and then come here. You're supposed to look for what's called as seat tilt, the seat depth, the cylinder present, the backrest and the armrest. It's very important that you decide on what kind of chair is ideal for you. Now, as I said earlier here, it's very important for us to know which kind of seat tilt is better. So when I say seat tilt, it is this. Earlier, what was told, or the dental chair were designed keeping all our joints at right angle. Okay, when all our joints are at right angle, our spine will definitely not assume the curved posture. The normal curvature of the spine is not assumed, so as we tend to slouch. So this is the ideal the chair. The earlier chairs which were designed almost flat. Now, what we have to see in our operating chair is it has to get this seat tilt, so that as soon as there is seat tilt, the thighs becomes obtuse to the floor. Okay, the thighs almost become obtuse, and in this way we are going to tilt the pelvic forward, at the same time maintain the lumbar curvature. So how far should my backrest be? My backrest should not be too broad enough so that it just sits at the lower border of my scapula. That is my shoulders. As soon as it is wider enough, if it is too wide, and if it sits at the edge of my scapula or my ribs, it mainly tends me to perform the normal movements. When it is a hindrance, what we do is we try to compensate by lifting our shoulders and our arms up. So we need to select our backrest, which is almost narrow, just about 8 inches in height, and about 5 inches in depth. The thickness should be just around 5 inches. If this is the chair which has been selected for a person who has a short torso, a shorter clinician, this would be the chair selected for a long torso person, a long operator who has a long torso, wherein the cylinder could be adjusted. If you could see, the height of the cylinder of our chair is often adjusted to cater to the needs of the operator, of the operating stool. Until late 2004, we had all our operator chairs designed to cater keeping all the dimensions of a man into consideration. It was only in 2004 that the operating chairs were designed to cater the needs of the female dentists. Then, as per the demographics, I would like to mention here, our female dentists are actually increasing day by day. So to cater to the needs of the female dentists, the operating chairs were designed this way, with a shorter chair height and the seat pan designed in the form of bicycle seat, which could help in providing stable lumbar support at the same time without any interference with the thighs. So our thighs is almost obtuse, and our seat tilt design was also given. At the same time, you should also have arm rests which is adequate. Now there are different types of arm rests available. So which armrest will adequately suit me is the next question. So there are different types of armrests available. This could be a fixed armrest. This could be a swiveled or a pivoting armrest, a telescopic armrest which moves in and out, and this is an elbow rest. Now, how do I select what kind of armrest I need? So that is again dependent on the body size and body structure, as well as the tall and short operators. If at all, if you can swivel it, well and good, to cater to the needs of the operator, as well as going up and down in order to increase the height up and down for a tall torso and a short torso, as well as a wider personality. It should be able to be adjusted in and out, thin and quite built, which has got a very good personality. At the same time, our armrest should go farther back to cater to the operatory requirements of the operator, so that it does not occupy more amount of space. So this is the tilt I was talking about in relation to our backrest. It should be movable back and forth, and this is the seat tilt to cater to the needs of the operator. So this was the ideal positioning which was seen, where the joints were almost kept at right angles. Okay, this is almost right. And if you could see, our lumbar support is not adequate. And when the operator is performing his or her own work, he tends to slouch in this design. So when the seat pan is tilted to an angle of 110 degrees, that is the ideal. Arms almost closer, without any neck tilt and slouching. So this would be our reference posture. So this is how you're going to select your operating chair to cater to the needs of the operator. So now you could actually visualize here, this is a operator with a tall torso, not adjusting his cylinder, not increasing the chair height. And if you could see, his lumbar support is also not well supported. And this is quite ideal, around 8 to 10 inches of your thickness of your backrest. So as soon as he adjusts the seat length, he'll be able to position himself well. But I would like to mention here, there's also a flawed design here. His headlight is not adequately positioned. Even now, even after raising his cylinder, he will tend to slouch because his headlight is not supported adequately. So this would be the ideal positioning of a female operator or a female clinician if he or she is working a short cylinder And the seat pan depth is also shallow. If the person is short enough, then the seat pan depth also should be shallow enough, so that he should not go so too very deep enough and tends her to slouch forward. At the same time, arms closer and shoulder dropped just below the ears, and this is how the operator should be seated comfortably. So if at all the thighs are parallel to the floor, this is how the operator positions herself. If slight angulation with the seat tilt is provided, this is how it is. And there's something which is called as saddle type of operatory chairs, which helps in proper alignment of your thighs. When I said oblique design, it is this, where the thighs are almost oblique to the floor. Okay, and this helps in correct maintaining of your lumbar curvature, as well as prevent too much forward movement or forward head posture. Here I would like to stress on one important, I would like to get your attention here. Patients with severe lumbar lordosis. Lumbar lordosis, when I say lumbar lordosis, it is severe curvature of your lumbar spine, should take utmost caution when you're selecting this type of saddle design of your operating chair. And this is it is not a chair, it is mainly a stool, where it does not have a backrest and an armrest. Because the moment you take a saddle stool, it increases your curvature, and that would give you large amount of pressure on your lumbar disc. So they should take utmost care here. So the next important consideration which we have to strike a balance on is selecting a patient's chair. It's very important. And the key here is getting closer to the patient. The more closer we are to the patient, the better is our visualization, as well as better maintenance of our neutral posture. So what and all we're supposed to look in when you're selecting the patient's chair. So we need to check for a narrow backrest. If it is too wide, now supposing, say for this, in case of this the patient's chair, the shoulder is near the shoulders, it is too broad. That prevents the closer approximation of the operator towards the patient, and that ultimately leads to the slouching of the operator to view the area of work. So thin narrow backrest would be ideal. The headrest should be able to be tilted up and down, because a flat rest which only helps us to move upward and backward, or upward and downward for the patient, but that prevents the patient moving any lateral flexion. Lateral flexion is oftenly avoided in a flat headrest. So in order to compensate that, what we can do, we can use a double articulating headrest in relation to this area, which could enhance the cervical support for our patient as well. At the same time, we can get closer to the working area. So how we can recontour our dental chair in case of pedo patients is using a pedo booster. And Kao has come up with newer designs of backrest, where it is almost narrower here, so that the operator can get closer at this area if he's a right-handed dentist in relation to the 8 o'clock position. If he's a left-handed dentist, just like me, I'm a left-hander, I'll get closer to a 2 o'clock position or a 4 o'clock position. And your articulating or the headrest should be able to swivel up and down, so that you will be able to position the patient head without giving any cervical compression near the occiput. And if you may have patients who has got kyphotic head, say for example geriatric patients age 60s often tend to have a stooped neck posture. So in order to cater to their needs and also maintain our health, we need to have a thicker headrest to support the head. So this would be the ideal double articulating headrest in relation to our headrest, which could bring or which could make our patient sit forward. At the same time, we can get closer to the working area in case of geriatric patients. So what and all we're supposed to look in here: degree of recline of the patient chair, headrest adjustment, the backrest, and adjustability of our headrest. And a very important consideration is your height adjustment. Now, how do I decide what could be the ideal height of a patient's chair? When I measure from the headrest to the floor, it should be ideal amount of space available between these two. It should be around 24 inches. So that allows the operator to move freely, to swivel freely from whichever position he wants, so that his posture often remains dynamic rather than static. At the same time, it also fits the needs of the requirements of the operator, a tall dentist and a short dentist. So few patients also come up with, there are also patients who come up with wheelchairs. So what do we do for such patients? We can also have a wheelchair tipper. So where the wheelchair gets tipped and you can have a headrest attached to the wheelchair, or you can customize, or we can have a customized headrest where you can use a T-plank and attach a headrest to it. And as soon as the patient comes, you can just attach the plank to the wheelchair and you can go ahead with your clinical work. You can also increase the illumination to avoid the shadows by using these headbands, as well as using mounted scopes. Now, few operators also would have older chairs. Now, how do I retrofit? How do I customize that? You can have a flexible cushion so that it is retroclined, and you can place a cushion here so that you can get that slope to have your thighs almost perpendicular to the floor or having an obtuse angle, so that you can retrofit your old chairs this way. So this is an ideal operator, having good lumbar support, seat adjusted, almost closer to the patient, neck well adjusted, not slouching, there is no forward head positioning, and she is easily positioned in relation to the operator. But there's something flawed here. What is flawed here is the operating light. Do we have a healthy dental lighting when we are actually working on the patient, which is very critical? And if at all, if this is not positioned ideally, then also we tend to slouch. Taking all these areas into consideration, all the positioning of a dental chair, if our headlight is not positioned adequately, then also we tend to assume faulty, awkward, flawed posture. So here I would like to mention one important thing. We need to know what is called as T/B ratio or a TB ratio. That is, now this would be called as a target light, where we are actually working, and the target light to background ratio should be optimal. So when I say background, it is mainly from your optimal background light. So that ratio should be around 3:1. That is more of our target light and should be compensated by our background light or the headlight. If you could see here, this is the some amount of background light which we can enhance in our operatory to prevent any shadows. So if the target light should be more when compared to the operating light. So each one is interdependent on each other. If only target light is available, then also it results in shadowing and we assuming a faulty, awkward posture. And if the background light is also more, then also it results in a shadowing effect, which could also correct positioning of ourselves, changing from the neutral posture to a flawed posture. So the very important is for us to have a correct lighting, which is around 3:1. Now, what if you don't have a background lighting? We do have other means where you can magnify yourself or illuminate yourself using fiber optic handpieces, and that itself could alleviate the requirements. So dental light position should be such that it is almost perpendicular to the line of vision. So it's very important to control your plane as and when you're working on the upper arch or when you're working on the lower arch. Where if at all, if you're working on the lower arch, you are supposed to use your headrest, your adjustable headrest or double articulating headrest to adjust the patient head so that she can lift his or her mandible upwards so that our vision is not hampered and our dental light is almost perpendicular to cater to the needs of the operator. And if he's working on the maxilla, he has to get your adjust your headrest and get it down. That's how you adjust. There's something called as lateroflexion, even in your, which is provided in your headrest, which could allow the patient to turn to the right or to the left, depending on the right-handed and a left-handed dentist, and the light almost perpendicular to the line of vision. So this is very important and critical not to have a stable working posture for the operator. It's very important to work the clock. So we need to know what are the positioning strategies. So this would be the operator zone, a static zone where no such work actually happens. And this would be the assistance zone if at all if we are practicing the 400 dentistry or 600 dentistry. Of course, one assistant will be onto the assistant zone. The other will be next to the operator in case of a right-handed dentist. And this would be the instrument transfer zone. This would be the work the clock positioning of the operator and the assistant, which is very critical so that we don't assume or tend to assume a faulty, negative or changing your position from a neutral posture to a flawed posture. So this would be a positioning strategies working the clock for a right-handed dentist. So this is the positioning characteristics for me. I'm a left-handed dentist. So I would be positioned here. So I'll be working from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock position. At the same time, a right-handed operator will work from 12 o'clock to 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock position. So he'll be shifting and moving around here, maintaining the neutral posture. It's very important to follow work the clock positioning. So this is the reason why I didn't mention the type of dental chair available for the assistant. So when if at all if you're practicing a 400 dentistry or a 600 dentistry, we also should pay adequate attention to our assistant's chair. So an assistant chair should be such that all the features are almost normal, the same as when you compare it with an operator's chair. The only criteria is the torso support and the abdomen support. Okay, these are the two the criteria which we are supposed to consider when we're selecting an assistance chair. It's very important that the torso is well supported and it should be swiveling around, and he or she should be able to rest it adequately. This is called as abdominal support, if you could see. Okay, if this is the torso support and this is your abdominal support, which adequate arm positioning, and he or she should be positioned in such the way it is she or he should be 4 inches above the height of your operating stool or the operator who is performing the clinical work, so that she or she will be able to visualize the clinician working as well as cater to the needs of the clinician. So this study was done in 2018 to know or to see whether the 12 o'clock position is better or a 2 o'clock position is better, and the author has concluded that for a right-handed dentist, if at all if he's performing in a 12 o'clock position, it brings about a lot amount of strain to your upper back, lower back, neck, arms and shoulders, and 2 o'clock position would be better. I would definitely say yes, this position is ideal, but as per my knowledge, this position is also not adequate because the patient's chair is not raised and his upper arms and lower arms is almost abducted and his neck is almost slouching again. So even if you're working in a 2 o'clock position, try to take all these area guidelines into consideration and try to work to obtain a stable neutral posture. So there are different delivery systems to meet the differing needs of the operator. Okay, very important to cater to the needs of the operator. They are side delivery systems, not to transfer the instrument from one corner to the other. Side delivery again. Rear delivery system, that is behind the patient, next to the operator. The major, I would like to stress here, if at all, if you're taking a side delivery system, very nominal and very ideal for a person who's working as a two-handed dentistry, only the operator and the patient, not following the four-handed dentistry, and this would be ideal. But the major disadvantage of a side delivery system is the operator gets locked in only one position. He will not be able to swivel around the chair. So it's very important to decide where your side delivery should be. So this would be my rear delivery system, very ideal if you're practicing a four-handed dentistry, where the operator and the assistant will be seating in relation to the rear delivery, and the assistant will be guiding the operator to cater to the needs of the operator. She or she will be shifting the necessary requirements required for the operator. And this is nothing but as over the patient delivery. This is called as over the patient delivery. Sorry for this photograph. This over the patient delivery should have been a little closer here. This is also not ideal, because it's quite far away from the operator, where the operator has to stretch his or her arms away from the neutral zone. So this is also not ideal. This over the patient should be somewhere here, very closer to the operator to cater the needs. There's something called as over the head delivery system here. Over the head delivery system, which combines the rear delivery and the over the patient delivery system, which is almost ideal for both the assistant as well as the operator, so that he or she need not twist his or her trunk. There's something called as transthoracic delivery system, where the delivery system or the mobile cabinet is placed next to the assistant near the shoulder of the patient. This is very ideal transthoracic delivery. If at all, if you're practicing four-handed dentistry, then you can have a mobile cabinet placed at this position, that is transthorax, next to the patient's shoulders, to transfer the necessary instruments. So our operatory should also be designed to cater to all these needs. So I've just given a glance of how your operatory should look and where and all you're supposed to position the operating chair and the assistant's chair to cater to the needs. Very important is enhancing the visualization through our lens system, that is magnification. It's very important that our illumination area is also very important to have a stable neutral posture for the operator. So what do we actually look in? So when questioned regarding magnifications in our practice, around 86.5% have not been using any kind of magnification. We had just 13.5% of practitioners using magnification as one of the means to maintain the neutral posture. Let's see. So when questioned regarding which type of dental loops they actually use, most of them are using through the lens loops when compared to flip-up loops. Around 36.4% have also resorted for flip-up loops. Larger field of vision is obtained through the lens loops, 81.8%, which is quite right. And what is the magnification of loops for crown and bridge? Yes, it is 3 or 3.5 magnification. Around 54.5% of the clinicians have told it right. So let's enhance, or let's see how do we enhance the magnification or visualization through the lens systems. Now you can actually see an operator using a through the lens loops. When I say through the lens loops, where the scopes is directly attached to the lens of the patient or the spectacles of the patient. Let me zoom it and let me show it to you. This is how it is, where the scopes are directly attached to the frame. It cannot be adjusted. Let me zoom it again and let me show you a close-up of the same position. So what's actually happening here? If you could observe here, after using the loops, the clinician is tilting his or her neck by more than 20 degrees, which is not quite ideal for the health of the neck muscles and your neck, even after using the loops. So what's actually you're supposed to follow is this. Your ears should be just above the shoulders. So even after using the loops, and if you're bending, then it is not serving the purpose. So this is the clinical reality. So you're using the loops, fiber optics light together with the loops, and you're bending and slouching and abducted hands, which is not quite right to practice. So you need to know certain aspects of when you're selecting the loops. So whenever you're using the loops, and if the loops are not designed or selected properly, what happens is your head tilt will become more than 20 to 30 degrees, which ultimately end up with work-related musculoskeletal disorders, or after using the loops to enhance visualization, you might end up in pain in the neck and resulting in the trapezius myalgia. Eyes also get strained, and the working area is around 60 degrees. Though your working area is 60 degrees, there is no point because head is almost tilted. There is other important criteria which you're supposed to consider is nothing but chromatic aberrations. If you see these two pictures, and if you're not selecting the correct loops for yourself, because loops designing is customized for each and every individual operator. So what do we see in these two pictures? Here, the loop is almost adjusted, or the scope is correctly fitted to the specs of the operator. So what happens in this? This is called as chromatic aberrations. So what is this chromatic aberrations? If you could see this picture, you can see a blue light on the outside of my T and a yellow light on the inside of my T. Can you see that? So this is called as chromatic aberrations, which commonly result if you're not selecting your working distance adequately between your loop and the working area. So this ends up with a lot amount of visual strain and muscle fatigue in your neck and your eye muscles. So what are the criteria which you're supposed to select when you're selecting for the loops or magnification loops? So it is very important for us to know the declination angle. So it is nothing but the angulation or rotation of your eyes or your eyeball in relation to your working area. So how do I decide what is my declination angle? Because declination angle for each operator would be different. So you need to ask your manufacturer to have a technical support to not determine your declination angle. So declination angle is nothing but rotation of your eyes downwards in relation to your operating area. So that is the distance. The steeper the declination angle, the better will be the view of vision, or better magnification is considered if you have a steeper declination angle. So the ideal declination angle would be around 45 degrees, which could vary from person to person. Why do I say it varies from person to person? Supposing the operators have their eyeballs placed too steep inside the socket, then that person would require a steeper declination angle, more than 45 degrees. So that is the reason why I told that the declination angle is also customized to cater to the needs of the operator. So this is very important point which we are supposed to think on when we are deciding the declination angle. So if you're using a flip-up loops, as most of the clinicians are using flip-up loops, it is always provided with a hinged mechanism. And if you're using a 2.5 magnification, the loops will be almost closer to their magnifying the glasses. And if you're using a 3x magnification, you will have a slightly farther, the loops will be placed slightly far ahead from your specs. So this double hinged mechanism you're supposed to look into if you're using a flip-up loops. And the other important thing which you're supposed to consider when selecting loops is your interpupillary distance. Interpupillary distance is often decided by your pupillometer, which is often got by the manufacturers, technical experts who comes to you. So that also varies from 54 to 74 mm. That also it varies from person to person. Why do I say it varies from person to person? Supposing patient has prominent cheekbones and the frames has to be placed far high, then your interpupillary distance often changes. So this is another important criteria which you're supposed to think of when you're selecting the loops. So you have your declination angle, you have your interpupillary distance, and the third important is your working distance. So whenever you're selecting the working distance, so that you're sitting straight on your chair and you're rotating your eyes down without tilting your head. Your head should be straight, the neck should be tilted less than 20 degrees. So how do I do that? I rotate my eyeballs downwards. So this distance you're supposed to measure. So it is always better to measure the working distance in your operatory when you're assuming the patient sitting in the patient's chair. So you need to ask your manufacturer's technical expert to measure that distance from your eyes to the working distance. Now, few of the operators often use mouth mirrors. At that time, that would be ideal. If you're using the mouth mirrors and visualizing and positioning yourself, again, that distance varies. So it's always better to use a mouth mirror and whatever instruments you are using, and then take the adequate distance to obtain the better convergence angle. So this is how you are going to select the interpupillary distance using your pupillometer. And this is what I was talking about, the declination angle. This is where the scope has to be placed. So the lower the scope is placed in relation to the frame of your the specs, the better steepness of the declination angle. So the steeper the declination angle, the better is the depth of the field. When I say the depth of the field is the amount of focus of the working area, even when the patient moves closer or farther, it remains the same. Okay, the working depth of the field is no chromatic aberrations. So the depth of the field is also very important, crucial when you're selecting the loops. So the smaller the depth of the field is often obtained in larger magnifications. So 2.5 to 3.5 is ideal. If you have not used any loops, it is always better to start from the smaller magnification and then proceed further to larger magnification, which is often termed as magnification continuum. So this how is the loops positioning in relation to the frame. So the lower the loops placed in relation to the frame, the steeper the declination angle. So here if you could see, this operator has prominent cheekbones. Okay, so she's got her frame got sculpted here so that it doesn't hamper her movement of the loops in relation to the frame. If at all, if the frame is quite large enough like this, a square frame, then it would impinge on our cheekbones. And what happens because of the heaviness of our loops, the specs starts falling forwards. So these are the very important criteria which you're supposed to take in when you're selecting the loops. It's very important your frames to be broader enough and to contour. You should ask your manufacturer to contour if at all, if this problem is arising. If this is the ergonomic positioning which we obtain using our loops, see this, the steeper declination angle, correct positioning, narrow head tilt, and arms almost abducted towards your shoulders. It is not quite raised apart, right? If this is the correct amount of magnification or the ergonomic positioning which we can assume using the loops, just imagine if you are increasing the magnification using your microscopes, what could be your ideal positioning? Most of our operators or our clinicians have resolved themselves for using their microscopes in day-to-day practice. So the transition should be from a smaller magnification to a larger magnification. You can't just directly jump to a 16x magnification all at once. It's always better to customize and to get yourself adjusted to a smaller magnification loops and then proceed further to a larger magnification loops. So these are this could be the ideal positioning. So here again, this is the working distance and this would be my declination angle. If this is the declination angle, then just imagine the declination angle here and with the microscope, definitely improved and magnified. And if at all, if you're using your microscopes for microscopic surgeries and implant-based surgeries, as well as restorative dentists, you can actually opt for microscopes to enhance the magnification. If you're using your loops or microscopes for crown and bridge preparation, then the ideal would be 3 to 3.5x magnification. If you're using it for implant-based surgeries, then 5 to 10x magnification would be ideal, which would enhance the depth of vision or the working depth of your field. So this would be my head tilt, which is very much minimal using the microscopes. Now, few of the microscopes are also inbuilt with cameras, so that as and when you are seeing and you're performing, you can record as well as educate the patient, which would enhance your productivity. So let's get into the next segment, which is 600 dentistry, which most of our clinicians are resolving in. Now, if you could see this picture, you can actually see the person is using forehand dentistry, but is of no use. There is no cooperation between the assistant and the operator is also not assuming the correct positioning. You can actually see the flawed neck posture, the slouched back as well as abducted arms, not ideally supported. I would like to play a video here. So let's see what's happening. There is no cooperation, there's no coordination between the assistant and the operator. The assistant positioning is also not apt. And the operator is also struggling to get into the field of view. And since our basic instinct to slouch, and the dentist is almost slouching to get into the area. Headlight is definitely positioned well in relation to line of vision, but what is the use? So how do we change and how do we utilize the four-handed dentistry here? The assistant should be positioned here again. I would like to stress here, he or she has to be positioned 4 to 6 inches higher than the operator, so that he or she can cater to the needs of the patient, the operator. And there should be minimal movement of the arms in relation to the assistant as well as in relation to the operator. And he or she has to assume the correct neutral posture. So how am I going to shift the instruments between? So this is how I'm going to shift the instruments. And very crucial here is to train the assistant as well. Our assistant position is also very important. Apart from we getting educated regarding how do we position, we need to educate our assistants also on how he or she has to be positioned in relation to the operator, and what could be the different instrument transfers which he or she should assume if you're transferring the instruments from one hand to the other. So what kind of grasps? Normally pen grasp, sometimes palm and the thumb grasp is also adequate if he or she is using your suction. So this is how you're supposed to utilize the instruments. So this is how you transfer the used instrument back to the assistant. So this is the new instrument, and how does she take the used instrument is from the other hand with minimal twisting of the torso. If I have to transfer heavy instruments, this is four-handed, where you're going to take the used instruments from one hand and transfer the other aeroter or the handpiece from the other hand. The major disadvantage with this is the assistant is not able to move if the operator asks for any other instrument. Okay, so this is when the sixth-handed dentistry will come into play. So this is how he is going to transfer the handpiece or the aeroter to the clinician by taking the used instrument from the middle finger and the little finger, and then using the thumb and the index finger to transfer the aeroter or the handpiece. So this is how he's going to shift. He's going to take it and then shift. So if you are going to give any anesthesia, this is how he's going to stabilize the operator's hand, provide the syringes, and then cater to the needs of the operator. It's very important to reposition all the instruments required before the starting of the treatment. Here I would like to stress on what is called as a motion economy. There are 5 motion. One is called as just holding your piece of cotton in your between your the index finger and the thumb. That is called as class 1 motion economy. Class 2 is holding your tweezer. Okay, if you could see here, this is your class 2 motion economy, where there's a little bit of very minimal motion. Class 3, class 4 and class 5 is nothing but as considered not to be used for operators as well as assistants. So what are they? It's nothing but you're twisting your trunk to reach the instruments far away from you, as well as adjusting your headlight, because that itself will pose that large amount of force on your shoulder muscles, especially the upper rhomboids muscles. So all that has to be avoided, and you're supposed to always assume class 1 or class 2 motion economy, so that you can conserve maximum amount of energy to deliver the quality treatment to the patient, at the same time maintaining your health. So next important thing is selection of the equipments is very important. So the hand instrument should be hollow resin handles, as all you clinicians would have already been using, well gripped without causing large amount of compression. There should not be any compression, and it should be a firm pen grasp. Carbon steel construction for most of the instruments, and ease of operation and ease of maintenance is what is actually required. For automatic handpieces, light should be lightweight, sufficient power, built-in light sources, fiber optic handpieces are always available. Angled versus straight shank. Angled is always better because that will allow you to hold it in pen grasp without having a pinch grasp. Okay. lightweight hoses and swivel mechanism, so that you'll be able to very minimally move your arms between the delivery systems and the operating chair, ease of activation and ease of maintenance. So the major goal here is reduced force exertion as well as maintain the hand and wrist in neutral position to prevent what is called as carpal tunnel syndrome. Now this era, as Ramesh sir has also mentioned, it is called as crazy COVID. So in this era of COVID-19 pandemic, we are also exposed to a lot amount of risk factors. So those were the risk factors which I told earlier, which is often called as individual risk factors, which could put our musculoskeletal health into stake. So there are risk factors which cannot be controlled by us, and one such is our COVID-19 pandemic, that is our environment and mental stress, which could cause hayway for our musculoskeletal health. Apart from this, the age as well as not maintaining the neutral posture would also result in large amount of damage to our musculoskeletal health and disc derangements and herniations. So these are some of the clinicians which I have collected with their permission, how they have assumed their dental practice as per the needs and using their the PPE equipments as well as their shields, as well as they've customized their the operatory as well. And few of them are still using their loops. But what do we actually see here? We are still not maintaining our inner health as well as our musculoskeletal health. So even after using all this, we are indulging and plunging into their giving quality treatment, but at the expense of our own health. So here you can actually see one of our clinician that he or she is using all the necessary precautions to combat this COVID-19 pandemic together with usage of loops, and at the same time he is managing his musculoskeletal health. There are clinicians using respirators and fiber optic lights together with your flip-up handpieces, flip-up loops, shields, extra volume evacuators. But what I am actually seeing here is they are not maintaining their postures, at the same time not using their or causing a large amount of exertions and forceful operatory. So few of the operators have also designed their operatory layout in the form of negative pressure operatory as well, but not maintaining their health. Few of them have also used their barricades to space their patients between to combat this COVID-19 pandemic. So how do we actually prevent and how do we optimize our musculoskeletal health? So prevention is not just for oral health, it is also for our musculoskeletal health. So let's see some of the chair-side operatory exercises which I have designed for the clinicians and for our students, which could often target few of the postural muscles, because our postural muscles need to be stretched and stabilized if you have to maintain a good neutral posture. So this is the stretch which will target your trapezius muscles, upper rhomboids, shaking your hands in between the patient, pectoral muscles, lifting your alternative hands either side, keeping your feet flat on the floor, again deltoids and your upper trapezius muscles, twisting your trunk, which will automatically try to stretch your longissimus dorsi, that is the upper muscles, which will help to maintain the twisting of your upper trunk as well as your thigh muscles, and flexing your wrist muscles, here. So this I have designed, which is called as 12-step chair-side Surya Namaskar. I think Patel sir would definitely agree with me. And this is often designed for our clinicians to take rest breaks between the practice, which often takes around 4 seconds to practice this 12-step chair-side Surya Namaskar, which is very important. So it will target not only your upper extremities, but lower extremities as well. At the same time, it also helps in enhancing the circulation between your neck, shoulder, and the arms, and your lower back and upper back. So this is called as 12-step chair-side Surya Namaskar. So what have we done for after knowing that our students are almost in the verge of getting into my work-related musculoskeletal disorders? We did conduct what is called as undergraduate continuous dental education program for the first time to mark the National Ergonomic Month. October is considered as National Ergonomic Month. So we had designed continuous dental education programs for our second year students who have just resolved in their mannequin training, and we have distributed the working sheets for them to obtain the ideal posture. So this has also been circulated among all the departments, so that immediate visualization in and off will help them to strike their mind that they have to assume a correct positioning. Few chair-side operatory exercises which was taught to all our clinicians as well as our students. So this is how it ended with. So this is called as texting neck syndrome. So no sort of exercise is so healthful or harmless that it does not cause serious disorders when overdone. This is what has been quoted by Dr. Bernardo Ramizzani. So it's very important. So let's get into the culture of ergonomics by getting the ergonomic culture into our day-to-day life. So this is called as texting neck syndrome. So let's assume something of this. So how do we assume this? But by assuming this, we are definitely maintaining a curvature of spine, but we are tensing our upper arm and lower arms. So when I was doing an online shopping, I just got my eyes caught on this gadget. So this is very apt, and I don't know, because this has to be, the design has to be analyzed again. But this is very ideal for right now, to make the, on a lighter note, that this would be ideal to position your mobile, if at all, if you're working to obtain a healthy positioning. So with this background, and with little bit of research what I have done, and I would definitely thank all of you to provide me an opportunity. I would definitely thank all the organizers, our JSS Dental College and Hospital, JS Academy of Higher Education Research, Indian Prosthodontic Society, Karnataka State Branch, as well as the J.R. Patel sir, our President IPS, the Rupesh sir, Secretary IPS, Sanat Shetty sir, IPS Karnataka State Branch President, Sunil sir, Secretary IPS Karnataka State Branch, and Ramesh sir, for gracing and helping me to bring whatever small knowledge what I had, I could share with you guys. And last but not the least, I would definitely thank Anil sir and Ravindra sir for giving me this opportunity and considering me that I could deliver a sound knowledge to all of you. Anil sir, thank you once again for considering me. Thank you one and all.
Dr. Meenakshi, finally, after a long time, you're making me feel like a student.
Yeah, I am also feeling like a student. Really, it was a nice deliberation, and she has covered all aspects of ergonomics in dentistry, which are really very important.
Thank you so much, sir.
Our all dental surgeons, our prosthodontists, all our from our profession, we all are missing something when we are working in the patient, or rather in front of the patient. So that it's a really good, and I must congratulate JSS, particularly. You are really doing very excellent that you have started this ergonomics in dentistry, and I came to know even before also that forensic odontology also
Yes.
you people started, and
We have even conducted the international conference, sir.
yeah. So you are always ahead. So Sunil, I think it's a wonderful program and wonderful that hosted by JSS Academy and conducted by Karnataka State Branch. And as you rightly said that I am very much interested, and let me tell you, even in my tenure as a president of IPS, I have declared three things from my side. One was digital prosthodontics, and digitally it is happening now in this year automatically. Somehow, coincidentally, it has happened. And second, which I declared, was a prosto power. And today, it's really, this topic is for that only. It's for prosto power. And I think a few of you must have seen my postures, upside down, those photos and all. Yes. I really like it. I really like it. So if you feel that I should start sharing at present or at the end, then I think let us say.
Sir, you can, sir. You can. There are quite a few questions. There are a few questions. In the meantime, while Meenakshi gets ready with the question and answers, maybe your small address would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. Nadigir sir is also. Sir is there, or
Nadigir sir? I think
sir will be joining in. Patel sir, you can take over, sir.
Yeah, no problem. So, Dr. Meenakshi has covered almost all aspects. starting from our position, patient's position, height, the light position, from where it should reflect. So it is in toto about our health, our physics, everything she has covered. So I need not to say anything. Only I would like to share my experience about all these postures, about all this, what has happened to me in past. Sorry, just I will put it on silent mode. What has happened to me, I would like to share it. I think more than 16 years before, when I was also a principal as well as I was working in my private clinic, and I was heavily loaded by number of patients. Per day I was treating 100 patients. That was my OPD. So I suffered from cervical spondylitis. What Nadiger sir was telling about cervical spondylitis, I was a victim of that. And my orthopedic surgeon, spine surgeon, he advised me to go for C1, C2, C3 fusion. And you know, if there is a fusion of this vertebrae, then what happened to our posture, about our movement of neck? It is always when I would like to move, then I have to move like this only. So that was a problem which was informed by spine surgeon, that you will have to have restriction of neck movement. You will have restriction of neck movement, and during surgery, if there is any problem occurs, then there is a possibility of paralysis. These all complications he informed me. So I was afraid about that surgery. Then I thought I should opt something else to get rid of this situation. Then I contacted one physiotherapist, and what you said in your presentation, Meenakshi, he rightly suggested me that everything has happened due to your posture. It's a professional hazard. Then I asked him, you tell me what should I do? This surgery, I don't want to go for surgery. Other than that, what should I do? Then he suggested me, let us have some treatment in active phase. It was very active phase. Overnight, I used to sit with some weight on that balance system and all, a traction system. So he suggested me to go for yoga, pranayam, yoga. These two he suggested, and then I started also. So just I would like to, I think you have all science you have included, but just few things I would like to say. Whenever we are at the chair, when we are practicing, after every 1 hour or 2 hours, whenever you get time, even twice a day, not every 1 hour, it depends on the severity of symptoms or severity of, or other, how much work you are doing, what kind of work you are doing. See, posture, I agree with you, Meenakshi, that what you have suggested. But sometimes for some treatment, for getting good result, we have to bend. We have to change our posture. Then all physics or whatever you said about ergonomics will be lost, and will be a victim of that losing the posture. So what I was telling you is about few exercise, like interlace fingers this way, and we can have it on the occipital bone or this region back, and you just exert force against the hand, against this palm. So that will give some relaxation in between these vertebrae, and will have a increase in blood circulation. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You do 5 times. Then with this palm on forehead, same way, 5 times, right? 5 times. Just for 15 seconds in every effort. 15 seconds, rather not 15, 10 seconds in every effort. Hold it for 10 seconds, hold it for 10 seconds, hold it for 10 seconds. That is one thing. Same way on this region, temporal region, with the hand 5 times, 5 times, 5 times, 5 times. Same way on another side. These are very simple stretching exercises which should be performed during your practice. Even I must say that not only for practitioner, everybody should do. In your, those who are clerk, those who are sitting on computer every day, working on computer, means for all those people, it should be done. This is one thing. As far as yoga concerned, I have shown my pictures or uploaded in my Facebook also. Sirsasana,
Yes, sir.
Trikonasana, even Vajrasana.
Vajrasana, yes, sir.
Vajrasana. Then there are 5 yogasanas which can be done. See, I don't say that full course of yoga you should do. It is not like that. You do it for half an hour. That's it. Morning half an hour. It is enough. Say walk and then yoga. Morning 1 hour for your own sake, for your physical fitness. It is must for all dental surgeons. This I am telling you because we are having professional hazard. So we should do it.
Yes, sir.
So few stretching exercise, few yoga. I don't say you, I don't advise everyone to go for Sirsasana because it is very dangerous. Without any guidance, if you do it, it might have some issues. Means the person might have some issues. So under the guidance of yoga teacher, it can be done. You can learn it. See, I will share one experience of myself. I was having weight 85 plus and I wanted to go for Sirsasana. Then my yoga teacher advised that first you reduce your weight. So I did some diet control and I reduced it to 65. 20 kg I reduced and I started learning Sirsasana. I did it. Even at this age I can do it. Right? So these are just my tips I want to give you, want to share with all our participants. They should do.
Yes,
so prosto power, that should be there. The all prosthodontists should be powerful to get rid of all those complications. Right?
Yes,
but at the same time, the ergonomics, whatever Meenakshi has suggested, or I must request to all participants, you should do it. You don't ignore it. Ignorance will be dangerous for you people. Okay, with this, I complete my.
Thank you very much, sir. Just to add a note, may I confirm that whatever exercises you have advised, I have been also advising all my staff and students.
Good, sir. Good.
And I can vouch that whatever exercises you have advised do work 100%.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In that, I have forgotten about pranayam also. See, pranayam, I think everybody knows about pranayam. Hi, Sanath, you also must be knowing it. Eh? Dr. Sanath, आप भी एक स्टूडेंट की तरह सुन रहे हो कुछ. See, pranayam, Dr. Anil, I think you also must.
Sir, we should never cease to learn.
Yeah, that is true. So pranayam also, there are only 5 pranayam. Only 5 pranayam, which also require not more than 20 minutes. 5 minutes Kapalbhati, 5 minutes Anulom Vilom pranayam, Bhastrika pranayam, Omkar.
Ujjayi pranayam.
Yeah, these
Ujjayi
are
pranayam.
5. Yeah, Ujjayi. Yeah, right. There are 5 pranayams, 5 or 6 pranayam, which you can do. Morning you can do yoga, evening you can do pranayam, or even if you can spare time only in the morning, you can do everything in the morning. That's it. Okay. Yes,
sir.
Anil.
Yes, sir. Sir, may I ask Dr. Meenakshi? There are some questions raised by the students.
Sure,
please.
Sir. Yes, sir. So there is one question from Dr. Raghu Devanna. Dear doctor, do you recommend any right postural guide belt during dental procedures for dentists who most of the times unconsciously have a tendency to work in wrong postures? Doctor, maybe I would not be the right person to guide you to any kind of belt therapy, because it's always better if you consult your physiotherapist. Because as and when you as a dentist, maybe we will not be able to guide you to how to use a postural belt or postural correctors. It's always your physiotherapist would be a better person to answer this. Maybe it's always better to you get indulged to a physiotherapist, and not required for you to always wear a postural guide belt. Maybe that's another condition which you're supposed to take care of. Nandalal sir, what would be recommendation for standing dentistry? May need attention, as few still must be practicing in this COVID times. Sir, I'm a standing practitioner. I rarely sit because I'm a left-handed dentist. So I almost resolve in a dynamic positioning between standing and sitting. So I think if you're raising your patient's chair and keeping all your bracket trays closer to you with the minimal amount of arm movements, I think that would take care of in establishing a neutral posture without having any flawed positioning. Dr. Febi, can left-handed dentist use right-handed chair? If so, what are the problems and risk factors faced by them? Dr. Febi, I'm a left-handed dentist and I actually practice in a right-handed chair itself. And I practice next to the spittoon. Initially, during my times, during my undergraduate and postgraduate level, I did find difficulties, and I did have some problems, as Patel sir did stress on. I had some.
Meenakshi,
Sir.
we have altered one dental chair for yours.
Sir, I was about to say, sir.
You mentioned that
provision is always there.
Sir, I was about to say,
sir. But sir, you are right. You rightly said that in college you must be having this facility. But suppose if you are going as a consultant to other dentists, and sometimes that dentist may not be having a chair. So then you must be facing problem. But I think all those exercise, stretching exercise, and these all are really helpful in such worst condition.
No, sir. What point I'm trying to tell is, if you are a left-handed dentistry, very easily you can convert the right-handed chair into left-handed chair.
Holding.
But only thing is, little weight adjustments are required, because the convenient, the regular conventional chair is balanced for having the unit on the right side, and when you're shifting it the other side, the balancing has to be done.
Yes,
we have done that for Meenakshi, sir.
Okay, good.
Another important disadvantage of a left-handed chair is if at all, if you are getting next to the spittoon, having the bracket trays on the left hand, then you cannot have an assistant towards the right side. And if the assistant is a right-handed dentist or an assistant is a right-handed person, then he or she will find difficult in transferring the instruments as well. That's another important thing which I had to face in my career, because I can't have an assistant at all. And I need to cater to my needs as per the requirements, and I prepare and then I continue with my work, and definitely with a lot of pranayama and exercises. And I'm also into yoga, not as much as Patel sir, but I do a little bit of yoga and I try to keep myself fit.
Good. So what I was telling about that,
yes,
even if we follow all ergonomic protocol, then also these are the adverse situations where we have to have this kind of problem, and which can be solved by yoga and all these things.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So tell us some guidelines of posture about standing dentistry. Of course, if you're practicing, the dynamism is always encouraging. You need to shift between standing and sitting. And if at all, if you are going for a standing dentistry, then you're supposed to raise the patient's chair, adjust the headlight, keep your bracket trays very closer to you. At the same time, you can use magnification, illumination as well, using double-headed mouth mirrors. If at all, if you're not resolved to using a magnification loops, and if at all if you're not having, then you can use fiber optic handpieces as well as your mouth mirrors to reflect the light to the area of working area, and that will enhance your correct operatory positioning. Maybe that will not require more of guidelines. Maybe over the period of time, if you develop it, maybe you can start practicing in the right way.
Meenakshi, can I ask you one question
Yes,
related
sir. Yes,
to
sir.
this standing dentistry?
Yes, sir.
See, I also like standing dentistry, and we work very efficiently in standing dentistry. Whenever complete denture, all steps we are going to follow, right? That is true. But there is one complication, that professional hazard. I think it is as a professional hazard, it is considered when we are having a standing dentistry.
Yes, sir.
Varicose vein.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, what precautions we should take in that case?
Sir, if at all, if the operator has varicose veins before itself, then he has to wear those tightening belts, and then he has to take rest breaks in between. Continuous working, definitely, I would not recommend, sir, because blood flow is hampered there. And because we do have our own clinicians in our own college with varicose veins, and this is what they've been resolved and doing quite often, and they take rest breaks, have their belts wearing, so that they improve their circulation as well. So maybe that you can do, and you can take care of when if at all if you're practicing standing dentistry, and shifting between standing and sitting would resolve that problem.
Good. Right. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Can you please guide us on how to select loops? I think Dr. Romil Jain, I think I did mention in my previous slides about how you're supposed to select and what are the criteria for selection of loops. And initially, if you're not indulge yourself in magnifications, it's always better for you to go for prismatic loops with a magnification of 2.5 to 3.5x. That's always ideal. And if at all, there are two kinds of loops basically, through the lens loops and flip up loops. Through the lens, where the scope is directly attached to the frame of the goggles. So the major advantage of through the lens loops, though the depth of the field is wider, the only disadvantage is you cannot, adjustability is always a difficulty. You cannot adjust the loops if at all, if you want to practice, and if you're a consultant, then you will not be able to adjust your declination angle. It is almost fixed. And if at all, if there is any changes in your prescription, your lens, and if at all, if you're resolving for another glasses, then the whole setup has to be changed. So you need to ask your manufacturer's technical expert advice if at all, if you have to recustomize your attachment of your loops in order to enhance the declination angle. That's one point. And the other thing is you can opt for flip up loops, where you can flip up if not required. Whenever the magnification is required, you can just pull it down through the hinges, and you can enhance the magnification. Even here, you are supposed to follow the three criteria, that is your working distance, declination angle, and frame size, because that's very crucial when you're selecting any kind of loops. The only disadvantage with flip up loops is it's very heavier and bulkier when compared to through the lens loops. And if at all, if you're a consultant and if you're consulting different clinics, so here I would like to add a point. Your declination angle is fixed as per your needs in your operatory. But that declination angle would vary and change if you're consulting in a different setup scenario altogether. In some other clinics, the dental chair positioning and your working length also can vary. So Auras Coptic has come up with a change or a modification where there is a screw provided in the temple arm, and you can change the declination angle to 5 degrees. Maybe that's another added advantage if at all, if you're opting for a loop. So I would definitely tell that it's better for you to start off with smaller magnification and then increase your magnification maybe for 10x and 12x, maybe 20x also if at all, if you're doing your microscopic surgeries.
And I think this COVID-19 era has taught us how to use all additional gadgets.
Yes, sir.
We always find it comfortable when this kind of gadgets are to be used.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good.
So we can take the technical advice also, sir, from different manufacturers, and you can recustomize yourself as per to cater to your needs. So I think I've answered almost all questions, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there are many. This topic is something where we have covered lot of topics. Lot of issues here.
Yeah.
So many of those things suddenly we'll try, if we want to see it again. I'm just informing all the participants that JSS Academy of Higher Education, YouTube, that is where the whole thing will be uploaded in 48 hours. Right now, this video recording will go to the IT team. They are going to edit it, and then they will be uploading it to the JSS YouTube. Now, all this, the whole logistics of arranging the webinar and editing and uploading is done by one Dr. Sumukh. As I told you, he is our IT chief's son. I honestly thank Sumukh for this, number one. Number two, Patil sir has been a very nice, sportively taken part in this. That is really something that has to be appreciated. Rather than formally coming and saying hi, bye, and thank you, he has really taken the initiative to be really part of the program. Patil sir, thank you so much for being such a nice.
My pleasure.
And may I ask Dr. Sunil to say a few words of thank you. Dr. Sunil?
Yes, sir. As we end today's event, I would like to thank all of you, all the participants for joining in for this webinar today. And there was a huge number of registrations for this webinar, which shows that the webinar series is really doing well. And I would like to thank the speaker, Dr. Meenakshi, for her excellent presentation. And more importantly, Dr. J.R. Patel, sir, the President IPS, Dr.
My
Rupesh,
pleasure.
the Secretary, for their encouragement, Dr. Sanat Kumar Shetty, the President of the Karnataka branch, for his constant inputs in encouraging and giving us all their inputs and guiding us through the entire webinar series. And more importantly, JSS Academy for their all the entire support, the Department of Prosthodontia, JSS, and the main person for taking up this initiative from JSS, Dr. Anil Kumar sir, the IT team, and more importantly, the entire organizing team for doing this webinar series. Thank you so much, one and all.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for this lovely opportunity so that I can share my little bit of knowledge, what I had on this. And I'm definitely hoping that you will take this small amount of message from my end and taking huge amount of message from J.R. Patel, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Requesting all the panelists to please
stay safe, stay strong,
yes,
stay
sir.
happy.
Yes, sir.
And finally, I request all the participants to please fill up the feedback so that your certificates will be sent to you. And there was a chat message saying that we want to actually mail a few questions. I have posted my email address in the chat box. If there are any further clarifications, you can email me. We'll definitely follow it up, number one. Number two, in the feedback form, in the remarks also, you can mention anything. And Patil sir, once again, thank you. It's been great to be with you. Thanks a lot. Hope we'll meet after 2 weeks again.
Yeah,
Thank you so
anytime.
much,
I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil sir. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Sir. Thank you,
Stay
sir.
safe, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you, one and all.
weekend.
Happy weekend, sir. Thank you, sir.